Who were your freshman breakout players of the year this year for Tennessee football? Think about it. I'll give you a couple seconds. Now, how many of those play offense? You get my point here. Freshman breakout players of the year offensively and defensively, plus who can redshirt? We're going to talk about the young guys here today on Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you for being here. We're a part of Locked On Podcast Network. That is your team every single day, everydayers. Appreciate you for sharing your Spotify raps on social media the last day or two. I've gotten a lot of you guys', that's good grammar. I've gotten a lot on social media. Appreciate that. If you listen on Spotify and you want to share that, @_Kane or @Locked On Vols, give you a little retweet to show my appreciation to you. So you guys are awesome for that. Of course, awesome for continuing to subscribe on YouTube as well as we get closer to the push to 10K. I'm going to talk a lot about the Young Bucks here on today's show. You know, who can redshirt? That's coming up in segment number 3. Some simple questions that, sure, we could go and look it up ourselves, but nobody got time to do that. So it's my job. I'll go do it for you. And we'll talk about that in segment 3. But freshman breakout players of the year. Last year, it was so much easier to have this discussion here on this podcast because there were a whole lot to choose from. Defensively, there were a couple to choose from this year. Wasn't that bad. Offensively, crickets. So that's what we're going to get into here right now on Locked On Vols. So, again, last year you had Dylan Sampson. Last year you had Squirrel White. Last year you had some freshmen that, yeah, sure, in blowout games. Now, Dylan Sampson came in and had a little bit of a role last year at running back, but, you know, really in blowout games, Squirrel White went off. Dylan Sampson went off. You know, I'm trying to think if there was any other freshmen a season ago on the offensive end that really did anything. But you had 2 solid options to choose from. Both those guys had some pretty solid stat lines as well. This year, there ain't nobody. You know, Cam Seldon played in all 12 games, but only had 19 offensive snaps, I believe. You had Ethan Davis, who played in 2 games, didn't do hardly anything. Nico played in 4 games, but as we know, we only saw Nico in blowout situations. Who else from that list, you know, can we even kind of toss around here? I think really that's the only 3 guys. You had a couple of freshman offensive linemen, I believe, that appeared in games. Well, you had 2. Sham Umarov. God, I haven't said his name in a while. You can tell. Umarov. There we go. He's appeared in 3 games, but not a whole lot of snaps. Aiden Bussell did not appear in any games. Vyson Lang appeared in 3 games, but these are all blowouts. My point is, there's really nobody on the offensive side of the football that we can really label as a freshman breakout player. So I'm going to bend the rules a little bit. In segment 2, I'll go true freshman, but I'm going to bend the rules a little bit here for freshman breakout players of the year. Doesn't have to be true freshman. It's my show. I can do whatever I want, right? What about redshirt freshmen? There we go. We got a couple of contenders here, right? We got a couple of receivers. Squirrel White. No, not him. He's a true sophomore. We've got a couple of receivers here. We've got Chaz Nimrod. We've got Caleb Webb. Those guys come to mind instantly. And so for the sake of this argument, we're going to go Chaz Nimrod. If you look at the stat lines for Chaz Nimrod and really Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod on the season, let's see here, 17 receptions, 178 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged 10.5 yards a reception. Caleb Webb, 14 receptions, 148 yards, and a touchdown, and he averaged 10.6 yards per reception. So 3 more catches for Nimrod compared to Webb. About 30, right on the dot, 30 more receiving yards for Nimrod compared to Webb. Webb actually had 1/10 more receiving yards per catch than Nimrod did. My point is, almost identical stat lines. So why go with Nimrod than Webb? Well, easy answer is Nimrod finished the year as the starter. Injuries kind of forced the hand. Of course, Brew McCoy goes down earlier in the season. You have Dante Thornton, who shifted to the outside. He goes down in the Missouri game, so somebody had to come in there and play those snaps. And Nimrod also showed the ability to where he could not just play outside, he could also play inside. Whenever Dante Thornton had to shift to the outside, or Dante Thornton was banged up, battered, and bruised. He missed a couple of games this year before. He missed a game, I believe, before his injury. There was not another slot receiver that you felt good about. So when Squirrel White went down, or when Squirrel White went out to get a breather, you had Chaz Nimrod who could slide inside. But more importantly, Chaz Nimrod, he flashed for me. You know, when nobody was playing well in the passing game against Texas A&M, Joe Milton very much included, Chaz Nimrod, that was his first start. He led the team with 35 receiving yards off 4 receptions. His touchdown against Kentucky, beautiful. Just beats the cornerback off the line. Just dusts him. Just dusts him. There we go. English words. Just dusts him off the line of scrimmage and sped by him, and the cornerback actually tripped and fell because he got beat so bad. I love that. I thought against Georgia, Nimrod kind of stepped up and looked pretty good. He just flashed for me. And Caleb Webb did some nice things. He caught a touchdown pass against UTSA. Caleb Webb was actually the first receiver to go in whenever Brew McCoy went down. But then they kind of played both of them, and then they flip-flopped, and Nimrod got a couple starts and all that. So Nimrod had more starts on the season, ended the season as a starter, and I thought he flashed and showed more playmaking ability. So my freshman breakout player of the year on offense is going to be a redshirt freshman in Chaz Nimrod. I think Tennessee should go out, as we talked about yesterday. I think Tennessee should go out and attack the transfer portal for another wide receiver. That's third on my pecking order. Tight ends number 1, offensive tackles number 2, wide receiver would be 3, defensive line, defensive back, and then maybe a kicker. That's kind of my pecking order here. But again, you don't follow that to a T. It's not like your first edition should be tight end. Your second edition should be offensive tackle. It's, best available and who can he get here and who's more willing to come here, right? So I'm all for Tennessee going out and getting another receiver. Javonte Payton, Brew McCoy, it's worked out pretty well for those guys, coming via the portal to Tennessee. But I think Nimrod has kind of carved out a niche here. I think Nimrod is a guy that you feel confident in, and you feel good about the experience that he's got, that where he can contribute for this offense for years to come. But still, I'm all for going out and getting a speedster. I think Tennessee is targeting an outside wide receiver, kind of a bigger body type. And Chaz Nimrod is not the tallest guy, but I like Chaz Nimrod. He showed me something this year. Is he going to be all SEC? Probably not. Who knows? He's got a long career ahead of him, but I like Chaz Nimrod. I think he showed me something. But it was like pulling teeth on the offense side of the football to kind of figure out who could I go with, because no true freshman really kind of fit this bill. And so I went to a couple of redshirt wide receivers, redshirt freshman wide receivers, and I settled on Chaz Nimrod. What say you? Really between the two, because that's about all we're going to get right here. Really between the two, who is your freshman breakout, your freshman breakout player of the year on offense? That's and a whole lot more as we will look to the defensive side of the football. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. I want to give a shout out to our friends over at eBay Motors. eBay Motors, proud sponsor of the show. eBay Motors, let's ride. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle leveled up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is back. Because with eBay Motor, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, guys, welcome back into your Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. Looking forward to kind of, again, this phase of the offseason where we look back, we reflect. I'm doing a lot of writing about it. And we're talking about young guys here today and freshmen. Gonna maybe not tomorrow, probably next week we'll get into super sophomores and the James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, Dylan Sampson, Squirrel White, that category. But it's a whole lot of fun. And if I'm a little bit red in the face, if you're watching on YouTube right now, it's because we got our heat and air fix at the house. No longer am I bundled up in blankets and leggings and everything else. Space heaters in front of me. We got heat in the house, so I feel really, really good just in time for this cold front to get up on out of here. But nonetheless, I got the heat cranked up, and I'm feeling much, much better now than I have in the last couple of days. All right, let's get over here to the defense side of the football. Freshman breakout players of the year on defense. Now, outside of offense, the defense kind of threw into the fire. And you can make the argument that guys needed to play more. Ricky Gibson needed to play more. I would have loved to have seen John Slaughter play at the safety position. But Tennessee on the defense side of the football actually rotated in some young guys, and you had a couple to choose from. Aaron Carter you could choose from. David Hobbs you could choose from. Caleb Herring you could choose from. Ricky Gibson you could choose from. But for the sake of this conversation, we will go with Jeremiah Thielander at linebacker. Let's backtrack here, though. Speaking of linebackers, coming into the season, all the talk from this guy, pulling the thumb here, and from a lot of you and a lot of my media friends, was about Aaron Carter. And I think Aaron Carter is still going to be a good player. I thought he, was going to be a good player this year, be that first guy off the bench type guy, and he was. Technically, when Keenan Peely played that first game, Elijah Herring was, but nonetheless, Aaron Carter was. He kind of fit that bill. 6'1", 230 pounds. If you remember, former running back commit for Memphis. Chose Tennessee over Alabama last December. It was a huge recruiting win. He was lauded as a preseason freshman All-American heading into the 2023 campaign by my bosses over at On3 Sports. And he had a solid season, right? 17 tackles. He had a big-time pass breakup in the end zone. Trying to think if that was the UTSA game. It was one of those games. He had a really nice, man-to-man coverage, was following the tight end out, and they had a nice pass breakup in the end zone. Did some good things, did Aaron Carter. He's got a long way to go, but he did some good things. Unfortunately, he gets hurt and misses the last 5-6 games of the season. So because of the Keenan Peely injury, because of the Aaron Carter injury, you are force-feeding. You are force-feeding Elijah Herring, just getting thrown to the wolves and being a starting linebacker. You've got Jeremiah Thielander that's now up there and taking snaps away from Elijah Herring. Caleb Perry's still in the mix, and he's in that third down package. But Jeremiah Thielander, who I thought entered the season as linebacker probably 5, exited the season arguably as linebacker 2. Elijah Herring still got more snaps than he did the last couple of weeks of the season, but Jeremiah Thielander was getting more and more and more play as the years gone on. How much more? Well, he had 34 snaps against UConn. He had 21, 29, and 22 snaps in games against Missouri, Georgia, and Vanderbilt. So, yes, Elijah Herring had more snaps, but he was kind of taking a bigger bite of that pie, if you will. But I thought Jeremiah Thielander did a really good job. First year in Knoxville, 12 games. He had 30 tackles, led all freshmen in tackles, had a tackle and a half behind the line of scrimmage, had a pass breakup. A lot of times I thought he was running around, kind of not knowing what to do, but doing it at full speed. And if you're going to make a mistake full speed, right? That's what my coaches always used to say. And so I saw a lot of that in Jeremiah Thielander. He's got the build, he's got the smarts. He's only going to get better, and I think he's going to be a really, really good player. So from experience, from playing the most, from being the most effective, I would say Jeremiah Thielander would be my breakout player of the year for freshmen on the defensive side of the football. And again, some of these other ones, I mentioned Aaron Carter. David Hobbs is a part of that regular rotation up front. Part of that 10 to 12-man rotation up front for Rodney Garner. He had 14 tackles on a TFL. Caleb Herring got more play down the line the last couple games of the season when starter Roman Harrison was out. But again, he was kind of overshadowed by James Pierce and Joshua Josephs. But, Caleb Herring, got in there and did some things this year. Ricky Gibson came out and played some critical snaps against Florida, earlier in the year. And when the cornerbacks were bitten by the injury bug, he was there and he came out and did a really, really good job. So I wish we would have saw more Ricky Gibson. I wish we would have saw a whole lot more of John Slaughter. Maybe even Jordan Matthews, Christian Conyer at times. But what I like about Brian Jean-Marie, man, he force-fed those young LBs. Now, Jalen Smith's going to redshirt. He played in 4 games. And there's some other redshirts on the defensive side of the football we can talk about later. Actually, we will talk about in segment number 3. But I like what I saw out of Jeremiah Thielander. Was this as easy to do as last year? No, it was not. Joshua Josephs was the slam dunk go-to for freshman breakout player of the year on defense last year, because he was that third option to Byron Young and then Roman Harrison, and then it was Joshua Josephs. James Pierce only played a mop-up duty last year and on special teams because Joshua Josephs was a little bit farther along. Now, Pierce has passed him, and we saw that this year with, we'll talk about it in our super sophomore episode, but James Pierce was second in the league in sacks this year. He was phenomenal. But you had Joshua Josephs. You had Elijah Herring that you could talk about last year, who had that Caleb Perry role on third downs that you saw this year from Caleb Perry. So you had some options, but still a couple options to choose from, and I think all these young guys are going to benefit from the playing time that they got this year as you look ahead to next year. Which one of these freshmen, kind of continuing on this theme of freshmen, we talked offense, we talked defense, who of these freshmen can redshirt and potentially stay here for 5 years? That and a whole lot more is coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. Do want to give a shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports in North America. The easiest, most exciting way to play DFS, that's daily fantasy sports, it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than your 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun I've ever had, winning up to 25 times my money back this football season, and now you can too with basketball season that's here too. You just select 2 or more of the players, pick more or less than there's player stat projections, and place your entry. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo pick selections across football and basketball in the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So you can take LeBron James, Travis Kelce at 10.5 combo for 3-pointers made and receptions. That's just one example. You can combine your sports as well and do all that at PrizePicks. Make sure you check out that reboot policy as well to ensure you if one of your players gets hurt early in a game. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. If you use that promo code LockedOnCollege, you're going to get a first deposit match up to $100. That's PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Promo code LockedOnCollege for an instant deposit match on your first deposit up to $100. All that and more at PrizePicks. All right, just a couple minutes left here on this edition of your Locked On Vols Thursday. We'll talk with Boogie Bentley here on a Friday show coming up tomorrow, and we'll get you set for the weekend, and really looking forward to that. But kind of continuing on with this young player theme here for today. Which freshmen qualify for a redshirt? It sounds simple, right? I mean, all you have to do is go online and look. But which games count? How many games is it again? Does the bowl game count? Let me clear it up for you. In order to qualify for a redshirt, you can play in up to 4 games. You can play 4 games or below, and you qualify for a redshirt, which is an additional year of eligibility. Back when I played, literally so much has changed in the last 5-6 years. Back when I played, man, you didn't have the 4-game rule. I mean, it was really kind of determined by, I don't know how they did it, but if you went in for a series, I think you could still qualify. But pretty much if you went into the football game, you burned that shirt, and it was over. And so, now you can play into as many as 4 games. And it was passed last year by the NCAA, which is a really good move, shocker, that if you play in a bowl game, those games don't count towards a red shirt. So take Nico Iamleava, for example. He's played in 4 games. If he were to play in whatever bowl game that Tennessee goes to, he could still qualify for a red shirt because that bowl game's not going to count. Why? Well, you're seeing so many different opt-outs. You saw points in times, was it LSU 2 years ago? LSU didn't have a quarterback. LSU, if my memory serves me correct, wasn't LSU during the coaching change that year, 2 years ago before Kelly came in for that bowl game? Weren't they playing a wide receiver at quarterback? You just get into a situation to where you have so many different opt-outs, and you've got to put people in position to go play, and you don't want to hurt those guys who are going to redshirt all over a silly and what people would argue right now is a meaningless bowl game. So I thought that was a really good move by the NCAA. All right. Who for Tennessee can redshirt? Of the 25 Tennessee freshmen who were on scholarship for the class of 2023, 16 of those are eligible for a redshirt. Here's a list of those players, and I'm going to break them down into positions for you. I've already mentioned Nico. The plan all year long was not to redshirt Nico. Nico was the backup quarterback. If Joe Milton's helmet popped off, Nico was going to go in. If Joe Milton twisted his knee or twisted his ankle, Nico Iamleava was going to go in. Joe Milton was pretty durable this year, all things considered. I mean, he was pretty durable this year, and so it never kind of came down to that. Nico was the first quarterback off the bench in blowouts. We saw that, but as the year went on and you kind of looked at, okay, well, yeah, he can kind of redshirt here. Tennessee just went ahead and kind of played it like that. It was the end of the it was the end of the Georgia game where Tennessee was getting blown out, and Nico had already played in 4 games. Is that right? No, 3 games. And you had Vanderbilt to come. And it was like, well, why put him in here in a blowout whenever you hope he plays next week or hope he plays in the bowl game, and that can be the 4. Again, if Nico is who we think that he is, that red shirt's not going to matter. So for me, it was just like, we'll play him. Who cares? It's stupid to have Joe Milton out there when you're down by 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter at Missouri or against Georgia. That's kind of my mindset. But anyway, the plan was never to redshirt Nico, but at the end of the year, he's only going to be played in 4 games, 4 games that count, depending on if he plays in that bowl game. And so you can slap a red shirt on there. It's not going to hurt him, right? You never know what might happen. So why not apply that red shirt to him if you can? So Nico Iamleava can redshirt. Deshaun Bishop, who was injured in preseason. This one's kind of interesting. So I'm going to do Deshaun Bishop. I'm going to do Nathan Robinson, and I'm going to do Tyree Weathersby all together. So Nathan Robinson played in 1 game and then was hurt, had to have surgery, missed the rest of the year. Deshaun Bishop and Tyree Weathersby were injured in fall camp. Those 3, don't take my word for it, but those 3 could probably qualify for a medical red shirt, right? Or a medical waiver. So, yeah, you can probably get a medical waiver, and then you have a red shirt that you can use, later down the line, if you will. But nonetheless, those 3 will qualify as a red shirt because they didn't appear in any games. Nathan Robertson appeared in 1 game. One guy can qualify as a red shirt at running back, and that is Deshaun Bishop. Cam Seldon played in 12 games on special teams and 2 on offense. At tight end, Tennessee has 2 players who can qualify for red shirts. That's Ethan Davis, who played in 2 games, had 2 receptions for 33 yards, and Emmanuel Okoye, who did not appear in any games this year. So of your 2 freshman tight ends you brought in last year, both of those guys can redshirt. At wide receiver, Nathan Laycock and Nate Spillman, your 2 wide receivers from the class of 2023. Both those guys can redshirt. Laycock appeared in 1 game, I believe it was the UConn game, no stats. Nate Spillman did not appear in any games at all this past season. On the offensive line, you can redshirt all 3 of them. Bison Lang appeared in 3 games, obviously no stats. Shem Umarov appeared in 3 games, obviously no stats. But you can redshirt all of those guys, along with Aiden Bussell, who did not appear in any game. So of the offensive linemen, 3 of those can redshirt. Defensive linemen, these are all freshmen, guys, remember that. You can redshirt 4 of these defensive linemen. Shadavion Bradley, who did not appear in a game. Tyree Weathersby, who again I mentioned earlier, did not appear in a game. He was injured in preseason. Nathan Robinson, who I mentioned earlier, appeared in 1 game, no stats. He was injured in week 1 against Virginia. And then Trevor Duncan, who appeared in 1 game, didn't have any stats. So of your defensive linemen who are freshmen, 4 of those guys qualify for a redshirt. At linebacker, of your freshman linebackers, you brought in 3. 1 of those apply for a redshirt. That's Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith played in 4 games. He was strategically held out some games to where he could play in the Vanderbilt game, which he did. 4 games, 3 tackles. He had a really nice hit on special teams against Vanderbilt that was really, really cool to see. So Jalen Smith can qualify for a red shirt. And then in the defensive backfield, of your defensive backs, only 2 of them can redshirt. That's Jordan Matthews, who appeared in 4 games, made 1 tackle, and Jack Luttrell, who appeared in 3 games, no tackles. You had some, of course, Ricky Gibson. He played in more than 4 games. Let's see here. John Slaughter played in all 12 games. He just didn't play defense, so I'm not really sure why he got only 1 snap against Vanderbilt on defense, which is just ridiculous. Christian Conyer played in all games as well on special teams. So anyway, any way you want to spin it, those are the freshmen who can redshirt. 26 freshmen kind of in that class, and you have 16 who are eligible for a redshirt. I'll go through this list again. Nico at quarterback, Deshaun Bishop at running back, Ethan Davis at tight end, Emmanuel Okoye at tight end, Nathan Laycock and Nate Spillman at wide receiver, Bison Lang, Aiden Bussell, Sham Umarov at offensive line, Shadavion Bradley, Tyree Weathersby, Nathan Robinson, Trevor Duncan on the defensive line, Jalen Smith at linebacker, Jordan Matthews, and Jack Luttrell in the defensive backfield. Those are the players who qualify for red shirts. All right, can't wait to get into tomorrow's show. We'll have fun with Boogie Bentley as we always do, and we'll get you set for the weekend and another week looking back at Tennessee football season. Plus, by the time we talk on Monday, we will know where Tennessee is going bowling, so we'll break all that down on Monday's show as well. Thank you, everydayers, for being here and making Locked On Vols a part of your morning routine. If you're on Spotify, I encourage you to check your yearly wrap. If Locked On Vols in your top 5, tweet it at me, @_Kane or @Locked On Vols. Would love to share that for the Twitterverse out there for everybody to see, and maybe we'll get some more listeners as well. Plus, the Push to 10K on YouTube, Locked On Vols YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Locked On Vols, the YouTube channel, as we get closer and closer to 10,000 subscribers. Thank you so much, everydayers, for making the show what it is. Appreciate you guys, and we will talk again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.